Okay, parents, hands up if your child has ever asked you a question that you have no idea how to answer. Yeah, me too, indeed.
Okay, well, all of you are in luck because we put out a call for submissions on our social channels, and youth and family therapist Tania DaSilva is going to answer some of your kids' toughest questions today. Welcome back to the show, Tania.
Nice to see you. So, Tania, let's dive right in. I definitely have had this experience, and we received a lot of people with questions around death.
Yeah.
So S. Smith 318 asked, what asked, what happens after you die?
This is definitely a popular one. So I actually like to start with what always stays the same, which is what happens to the physical body. So I'm like, when we die, our body stops working. I'm like, our brain doesn't think anymore, we're not hungry, we can't get up and walk, everything stops. So I usually compare it to when they break a toy. I'm like, the toy breaks, I'm like, it doesn't work anymore. I'm like, we can't play with it anymore, we usually don't see it anymore. So that also helps with a lot of the worries that they have around, is grandma going to be hungry? Is she going to come to my birthday party? It kind of helps them understand the physical aspect of it. Then where it gets a little bit more, not complicated, but it could differ, is the spiritual beliefs. So if you want to talk about heaven, if you want to talk about reincarnation, whatever your belief is, you can jump into that after explaining the physical piece. One last thing that I always really like to stress is talking about how are we going to celebrate this person, remember this person, or still talk about them presently without them actually being physically present anymore.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so this next one is a classic. Samantha Ads has a 4-year-old, and the 4-year-old wants to know, how did you and Daddy make me?
I actually love this question, and not everyone agrees with the way I usually talk about this, but I will talk about it in an analogy format. So I'm like, when we're making a cake, I'm like, first we decide that we want to have a cake usually, and then we talk about ingredients, right? So we mix eggs, we mix things together, and then it bakes in the oven. 4-year-olds can understand that. So usually I like to use real words with kids because as they grow up, you want them to know that. So I'm like, Dad and I decided that we wanted to have you, and I have eggs, not the ones in our fridge, but I have eggs, and Dad has sperm, and it's like little worms, and usually they're all grossed out, but I'm like, those things mixed together, and you bake inside of me for 9 months, right? So a lot of the times what happens is we're like, well, how did it get in there?
Yeah.
That is where parents differ, and I'm like, it's completely up to you. Sometimes we're like, that part we're gonna talk about when you get a little bit older, or we can introduce the intimacy part where it's like, Dad and I had a special hug, and that starts introducing intimacy in a way that they understand, and it also makes them understand that not everyone we hug is going to get pregnant. It's those special interactions. So it's depending on what people are comfortable with.
This reminds me, I have, my cousin has 2 young kids, and it reminded me of the time when you give them your answer, but then they're also getting answers from all their friends. So you say that, and then it'll be like, well, Jenny says that when her parents turn off the lights, that's when the baby's coming, whatever. So how do you balance that, influx of information?
Yeah, well, and I think, again, it depends on age and how much you want to share, right? Like, if we're talking about a 4-year-old, I like using analogies where it's like, when it's in the oven, the lights also go off, right? And it's baking. If they're a little bit older, you can obviously add a little bit more context to that, right? Yeah. So, or sometimes I just explain, the way we explain things might be different from the way other families explain things, and that's just the reality of things too, but you'll get a lot of those interesting follow-up questions.
Okay, so here's a good one. Navina's child is asking, what is porn? And we also heard from parents who were being asked, and this is interesting, what is a prostitute? So again, to your point, you never know what they're hearing on the schoolyard, the playground, from other people. So how would you suggest we tackle these kinds of questions?
I actually do get these questions a lot in sessions as well. And again, so with this, I always kind of go over, it depends on what you're comfortable with. If your 7-year-old is asking you, you might want to delay that conversation, and you can do that by saying, this is more of an adult conversation, something we'll talk about when you're older. What I do like to do is, regardless if you're deciding to have the conversation or not, I always ask, where did you hear that from? What did you hear, and what do you think it is? We want to gather information. Is it from their older siblings? Is it from someone at school? We want to know where it's coming from. And then again, I like to use real words. I like to be honest. I will explain porn as, it's videos or images of potentially, 1 person or 2 people that are naked, and they're doing things that, are private. Same with prostitution. I know sometimes this is a hard one to talk about, and it's someone that chooses to use, usually their body in a more intimate way to make money. So I know it feels awkward sometimes to talk about it, but I think the follow-up conversations are the most important. You can go into consent, you can go into boundaries, you can go into adult content versus child content. So you can kind of direct that in a way that's also going to make you feel more comfortable with the information that they're getting.
That's great.
Okay, so this next question is from a teenager who asked their mom, do you have breast implants? She does.
Yeah.
So how should she answer this question?
So again, when they ask, they usually know or have an idea or have heard something. So a lot of the times, first I consider the parent, where I'm like, why do you not want to be honest about it? Usually it's, we're worried about, okay, if I'm honest, are you also going to want breast implants? Is it going to play into potentially your insecurities because now I'm owning mine? So what is the reason that we want to keep this private? And then I always like to step back and think about, this is a great opportunity for us to model being honest about hard conversations, where if I want you to be honest with me about things that make you uncomfortable or you're scared I'm going to judge you over, then I want to show you that it's okay and this is a safe space. And then you can honestly navigate that conversation in any way. Talk about your experience, what you learned, you know, your expectations for if this is something that they're interested in. So it can kind of go any way, but you rather be seen as honest than a liar because they will know you're lying.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got time for one more. So Nessa R10S is in the middle of a divorce and her child is asking, will you and dad ever be friends? That's challenging. What's your advice here?
And this is something, again, in sessions we hear a lot of. So my first question with that is always like, you know, why do you think we're not friends? So usually they've experienced something or seen something that is making them feel like we're no longer friendly. And then I always follow that up with, what would it look like if we were? So it helps us understand, is this doable? Can we actually, you know, meet this expectation? Sometimes it's just a child being like, I want both of you to come to my soccer game again, right? So we want to get clear on kind of what both mean. And then I, again, am always honest, where we're not going to say yes if we're not sure. So it's okay to be like, I don't know if we're ever going to be friends, but what I do know is that, you know, I'll come to your soccer game, we'll invite dad, and, you know, we'll do our best there. You can also move into what we do know for sure, right? Which maybe it's schedules, other things that are coming up during the divorce that are going to obviously make them feel more comfortable about, okay, I'm secure about this. Don't really know about your relationship, but at least this is helping me feel a little bit more comfortable. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tania. It's been great having you.
Thanks for watching. We've got lots more discussion and debates on everything from food and fashion to pop culture and current events. Don't forget to click like and subscribe.